Hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another weekly update about news and information on DCS World. I'm your host, Prickly Hedgehog, of course. Join me now as we talk about a number of little things going on in DCS World. So, starting off with news about the Folds of Honor program, which is going to be in part hosted by Mover, if you're familiar with his channel. There is an F-16 update with regards to Mavericks and Harm, so you probably saw Wags' awesome video earlier this week as well, which showcased some of those things. Looks exciting, and I think a nice kind of update and step forward in the development of the F-16C, which I think most of you will be pleased with. Updates to the P-47D, of course, a little bit of retro or early model stuff, apparently. We'll talk about something not entirely DCS related, but certainly gamer related and therefore affects us, and that was the debacle of a release for the Nvidia 3080. It was released for sale yesterday, but problems ensued, so we'll talk a little bit about that and its impact on our game. Wonderful interview with Katya Peredenko, the COO of Eagle Dynamics, by Tactical Pascal. After completing a very successful 24-hour live stream, Tactical Pascal and one of his friends there went and did a pretty in-depth interview with Katya, as I said, who is the COO of Eagle Dynamics, and discussed the directions that Eagle Dynamics is taking right now, and some other cool stuff about the game and the company, which was very, very helpful. So let's start with Folds of Honor very quickly here. So this is an upcoming event. Registration will close on the 25th of September. So if you are interested in getting involved in dogfighting, you get to pick any aircraft in dogfight, 1 versus 1, guns only, BFM combat in other words, against other players across the world in this charity event to support the fallen and their families. So it's a nice, worthy cause, and I know that Mover has talked about this a lot on his YouTube channel, and if you haven't seen his channel, it's worth watching. Obviously, he's a former F-18 pilot, but he talks a lot about real-world things as well. He's an author, and he has some cool stuff on his channel, and he does interview real fighter pilots. He does have still some friends. Gonky, of course, appears. I like Gonky as well. I think I like him just as much as Mover, so they're a great bunch of guys. Very entertaining, and they have real-world knowledge about the aircraft that we love to fly in DCS World, which I think is cool. So you'll compete for prizes from Eagle Dynamics, Fox Mount, Desk Mounts, Black Hog, and TacView. Now, if you're not familiar with TacView, that is a three-dimensional analysis tool which automatically records when you set it up your flights, and you can use that data, relook at the 3D model of what you got up to and what you did right and wrong if you ended up in sort of BFM combat, which is really, really cool. It's a very helpful analysis and data tool for you, and I've used it a few times. I don't use it enough, actually, to look over what I was, doing right and wrong during sort of combat maneuvers, which is really, really handy. It's a neat little tool. So, pretty similar prizes here. First place basically is not dissimilar to second and third, but you have the addition of a fight with Falco, and you will get the Fox Mount Desk Mounts. The fight with Falco is taken out by the second place, and then the Desk Mounts are taken out by the third place. But so worst you can do is obviously not get very far, but you're probably going to learn something anyway, and hopefully have some fun doing it. And I don't know if I'm going to have any chance to do that because I got too many other projects right now that are absorbing my weekends. But if you are interested, I'll try and put up a link in the description below so you can check that out if you do get into it. And if you do, let me know how you do, because I'm curious about that. Let's look at the 47D Thunderbolt, the P-47D Thunderbolt, excuse me, which, as I said, they're introducing some expansions to it, some early modification variants will be available. In this instance, we're talking about the 47D 30, which is equipped with a Mark 8 gun sight, an earlier version of the control stick and throttle lever, as well as modified bomb dropping mechanics. From the exterior, the model is easily distinguishable due to the absence of the fin strake in the upper fuselage, and the second modification of the P-47D 40, which is one that has the rocket capabilities. These rockets are the familiar HVARs and the M8 rockets used extensively by the Allies in large numbers during World War II. It's funny how much evolution there was in the weapons of war during the Second World War, how quickly aircraft changed and were modified and weapons became, things. When we're talking radar, sonar, rockets, all of these major advancements in a very short period of time during the course of that war. So incredible stuff. Anyway, I digress. The aircraft bombing loadouts have also been expanded, and apparently they're going to also bring in integration of water methanol injection, improved engine damage modeling, and compressibility recovery using underwing dive flaps. So some really cool features there of that particular aircraft, which I was unaware of that it had those capabilities. So I haven't flown the aircraft. I don't own it. It is something that does appeal, but just again, time thing. I've got too many other aircraft I'm delved into, as I'm sure you'll understand. All right, the Viper. We talked about this. We know this is an ongoing early access module still, and lots of work being done. Wags did a great video earlier this week showcasing the implementation of the Maverick system and the future harm. It looks very similar to the F-18s, although he did point out you may need to watch my video a few times to get the hang of things. It is slightly different than the F-18, a little bit more complex, but while there will be, how would you say it, some similarities or comparisons, the F-16 is systems are slightly more sophisticated, not sophisticated, that's not the right word, just slightly more tricky, more complicated to get to the same, or get the same results. That's what I'm trying to say. So, a little bit of a learning curve, in other words, as most of the more complex modules are in this game, as we know. It's a constant subject of discussion. But a good one, because we like that. We love the intellectual component of this and the joy of being understand something and then go out and successfully do it. That's why we enjoy Sims, which not everyone likes, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. In fact, we'll talk about that right now. The Nvidia 3080, the RTX 3080 cards, received so much hype. I mean, I talked about it. I mean, I got to the point where I was starting to get a little... I need to upgrade my system a little bit. It's due. Not that I really want to, but I was kind of caught between the cusp of the arrival of the 20 series cards, and I recently purchased a 10 card, which was an upgrade for me, and then suddenly these new cards came out. And then 2 years later, so 18 months later or so, I'm kind of like, man, now I feel a little bit, underpowered, so to speak. And then looking at some of these cards, like, I just thought, wow, $1,500 for a 2080 Ti. It's a little outrageous. Okay, overclocked. It's going to be a lot better than the 10 series, but is it enough to justify that kind of price? As I've said previously, some of these graphics cards cost as much as an entire system, depending on where you look in the specifications. And then the 3000 cards came out, and they were saying, hey, we're going to offer half the price, basically, and twice the performance. So naturally enough, there was a truck ton of interest. What a bizarre week for PC gamers. It was yesterday with the launch and release of the RTX 3080. I mean, if you can call it a release and a launch, because did you get one? Me neither. And if you're wondering why, basically the entire stock disappeared in 5 minutes. And apparently they experienced sales volumes much higher than they even get on Black Friday specials. Actually caused some sites to crash. Now, many people complained that there were bots responsible for blanket buying the stock before the hoi polloi of you and I could even get access. There are apparently reports right now of a Founders Edition card on eBay being sold for $70,000. That's bonkers. That's absolutely bonkers. That's twice the price of my car. Brand new. It's 2 years old now. This is bonkers stuff. So while I'm a little bit upset about the fact that we couldn't get a card, it wasn't even feasible. You loaded up the websites and all it was out of stock or check back later type stuff. The hype must have been enough that they clearly did not. They said that they did not anticipate the plethora of sales that they were going to get. But the reality is this: when it comes to DCS, you are going to see an improvement in terms of your experience with the game. Mostly probably in frame boosts. But remember that the software architecture right now, and this was also another tip that came up from Linus Tech Tips, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But most of the games these days, a lot of games are not actually taking advantage of these ray tracing and all of these fantastic things that is built into the hardware of these graphics cards. And in fairness to DCS, that software is the same way. We're not really exploiting all of the features that the features of the card and the multi-core processors. It's something that we've talked about in the past. Now, they are aware of that, they're working on that, and they want to improve that position. So don't get too bent out of shape over this, because again, I'm frustrated, no doubt. I thought this was a good thing, but remember that while it will improve, has to improve the frame rate and stuff like that, it's not going to revolutionize your DCS experience. It might make a difference for VR, perhaps, which is pretty demanding on systems, at least right now. But I think for most of us, the experience, as I said, is not going to revolutionize the game. Now, this comment about a lot of games not taking advantage of this new hardware, which Linus Tech Tips was talking about. So Linus was saying this, and he actually pointed out that most of the games these days don't exploit it. But he also kind of attacked simulation games quite roundly. He actually suggested that most people aren't coming home to play and relax with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and I lumped DCS in that world as well. And I think there's probably some truth to that. He pointed out that in general, flight sims and simulation games are not all that popular, and he started comparing various Twitch stream titles and found that Microsoft was barely even registering. It was just a few thousand people, and much lower than most other titles. And then he actually fired a really critical salvo where he says, well, that's because Sims are for girls, end quote. Now, he immediately apologized, and he qualified his comment, and he said, look, I'm being deliberately offensive, so please don't take offense. But what he was really trying to say was, in rather clumsy terms, I guess, and I don't want to say inadvertently sexist, but I think he realized that he, probably shouldn't have phrased it in that way. But that flight sim games generally are not as popular as many other titles, first-person shooters and stuff like that. Those games, of course, generate mass membership, Fortnite, those kinds of first-person type games generally are going to be more popular than say, flight sims or some other simulations in general. They represent, of course, a very niche market in the gaming community, which I think is a reasonable assessment. There were some other caveats as well about the way in which they were gathering that data. It wasn't entirely fair, and there was some bias there. But getting back to the girls' comment, of course, I hope that flight sim, is made for girls. We have Katya, who's the COO of this company right now, which I think is cool. So I think the game is definitely made for girls, as it is for any sex. And we do have, can't be denied, we have some incredibly accomplished female pilots out there, and quite a few of them are actually running successful YouTube channels, including one young lady, pilot Emily, who's a Canadian airline pilot, and she is actually doing some tutorials right now for Microsoft 2020. So I'll throw in a link to her. She's one of many female pilots out there that get showcased on YouTube. I haven't seen too many others that are doing actual tutorials for Microsoft Flight Simulator, but let me know if you know of a few. But I'll put up a link to her page as well if you want to check it out. She's kind of a talented person. So let's look at the COO of Eagle Dynamics right now and the comments that Katya Peredenko made, as I mentioned earlier. And this is a great interview. It really was. I could see she was struggling a little bit with the English translating. I mean, I don't envy her. I'm always jealous of people that are multilingual. I think it's really cool. But, she answered carefully. She thought carefully about her answers. And there were a couple of good takeaways. This won't be comprehensive, of course, in terms of the breakdown. But I'll let you watch the video yourself if you're interested. I'll throw in a link below. So I'm not going to do a comprehensive breakdown of all the things that she said. But there were a couple that I thought were interesting. She indicated that weather is actually ready to be implemented and is going to be introduced with clouds. They're going to do new clouds. They're going to start with the clouds first, and then they are going to introduce the weather. And there will apparently be an option to make adjustments to localized weather as well as map wide weather adjustments. Now, I'm not sure what this is going to look like, how they're going to implement it. It was just something that came up in the discussion that she was excited about. There were a few things that she was pretty proud of. They were pretty proud also of the new channel map that they'd worked on. I know some of you have asked or complained about the amount of military projects, or questioned whether or not we're devoting too much time to that, and if they are making a lot of money from these military contracts, why do we have to pay for things that trickle down from that? And of course, she pointed out, well, it doesn't sound like they're making that much money that, that's all they care about. She pointed that out. It's not just about money. They are passionate about this. And they were actually very passionate and excited about Microsoft 2020 coming out as well. They were inspired by the work that had been done on that particular franchise, which I thought was cool. And she thought it was an interesting way of broadening the base, because then you have people that want to get into Microsoft 2020 that may be new to the flight simulation genre, and then that can also maybe lead them onto DCS world as well, as I say. And as most of us have said in the past, while we like Microsoft 2020 from a visual point of view and the kind of flying that can be fun, it's more of a scenic kind of flying rather than getting into the more exciting world of combat simulation, flight simulation at least, which DCS offers. So, there was a potential there basically to, drag in some new customers that perhaps were unfamiliar with DCS world, but through Microsoft 2020 experiences can now maybe branch out into that. So that was kind of an interesting thought. Now, getting back to that military contract stuff, she had said they only have 2 programmers actually that are dedicated to military contract work. It's very focused, very detail orientated on the things that they're doing there, and they still have a lot of work to do on legacy code and enhancing those things. I don't know how much more work they have to do on that, but it's a huge task. But they have not lost sight. She said their core mission goal is still to deliver all possible features of every single aircraft, bearing in mind, of course, restrictions. So, there are restrictions, of course, military-wise, politically-wise, unfortunately. So those are some issues that hamper some of the things that they can do, and I think that's important to realize. I think it's important to realize, when you hear these people talk, the various CEOs and COOs and other top brass, if you like, in Eagle Dynamics, they're passionate about the product, and they're passionate about what they're delivering, and they're proud of the things that they've achieved, and they've acknowledged the things that haven't quite worked quite so well, and some of the foibles and failings, where those things have occurred. So overall, I have to give them credit for the transparency that we have seen from them in the efforts to maintain contact with the community. Katja talked about, the various YouTubers, including Tactical Pascal, who bring, the game to life, provide tutorials, and do a lot of other things that help the community engage with this franchise and build that bridge, if you like, so they can see how the community are reacting to the product, which I think is a cool thing. So that brings us, I think, to the end of this week's news. No patch, sadly, this week, but it is coming, and remember, it is going to include, of course, the elements that Wags talked about and some of the other bits and pieces that I've previously mentioned. So I would expect that probably next week or maybe later this month. We're running out of month, but stand by for that. And I think I'm looking forward to firing some Mavericks from the F-16. How about you? All right, that'll do for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting the channel. We popped over 3,000 subscribers last week, and it continues to rise, which is cool, and I can't do it without you. So I really appreciate that. So don't forget to continue to like and subscribe. Post some comments below about what you think of, your experiences with Eagle Dynamics. And also, if you've got a 3080 card, I'm really interested in that. And if you're running DCS with it and what your experience is with it. I don't think there's going to be too many of you out there, because it was a bit of a debacle. And it'll be interesting to see if the 3070 is available as well. All right. That'll do. Like I said, we'll wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking. Thanks for engaging. Stay flying out there. Stay safe. This is Prickly Hedgehog out for another week. Cheers, guys.